I also rise to speak on this motion. I will be supporting it, although I do have some problems with the motion as put, which I'll get to in a minute. But firstly, I'd like to express my sincere condolences to, on the Israel side, to the civilians who've been effectively caught up in a terror attack and have lost their lives. My heart goes out to them. The images, as others have said, that have gone out through in the past week have been absolutely horrific. Also, I'd like to express my condolences for the innocent civilians who live in Gaza, who suffer under a brutal regime, and they also are suffering badly at the moment, and my heart goes out to them. My condolences to the innocents that are undoubtedly being hurt there. With regards to the motion, I'll start with something about it that I like. Point A talks about the difference between Hamas and the people, the Palestinian people. This is something that libertarians recognise, is that the government and the people are two different entities. The government rules over the people are not the government, even though sometimes we mistake it in our language. We say we should do this when we're really talking about the government should do this. In Western countries, we're fortunate in that we have many protections against the worst excesses of the state. In the United States, they have the Bill of Rights, which doesn't really set out things for the government to do. It sets out things that the government should not do. It restricts their power to protect rights. In Australia, we don't have as hard of protections, but we do have the Victorian Charter of Human Rights, and we have some restrictions so that lawmakers must at least consider these rights when performing their duties and performing their actions and making laws. But not everyone throughout the world is fortunate enough to live in a state where those protections exist. And unfortunately for the people who live in Gaza, the Palestinians who live in Gaza, they live under Hamas. And if we look at Hamas, if we look at their charter, which states their objectives are genocidal. Their tactics are murderous, and they are brutal rulers. So I agree with others in the chamber that Hamas is an awful organisation which those that suffer under their rule we should have sympathy with. I would say now to some of the things that I am concerned with this motion. I'd like to point out. Item I talks about hate speech. Hate speech is a nebulous concept. Indeed, many discussions that I would consider well within the realms of civilised debate would be considered by others to be hate speech. So I'm a bit concerned about putting something so ill-defined in there. And also J says, recognises an attack on any religion is an attack on all religions. I also take issue with this, firstly because it's plainly untrue. An attack on one religion is an attack on one religion, but I'm unsure of the meaning of attack here. If the meaning of attack is to criticise, then criticising religious extremism is exactly what we should be doing. And in fact, in the Western world, we must remember our history. It was liberal democracies were born from attacking the overarching religion of the day, which brought us out of the Dark Ages and into the Enlightenment. That was due to an attack on our overarching religion, and that's where we became, separation of church and state and these sorts of things, because people had the courage to stand up against religious extremism. One thing that really concerns me, though, and how we respond in Western countries. As has been said, we're meant to value peace and liberty and these sorts of things. And the thing that made me become a libertarian in the first place was our response to terrorism, our response to the September 11 attack and the subsequent Iraq war. And in my view, if Western societies are going to stand strong, we must defend our liberty, not crush it. Because what happened after those wars, after those terror attacks, is we ramped up the controls on our own population. We restricted our liberties within Western democracies, and that is doing exactly what the terrorists want. The terrorists want to provoke a reaction within the Western world so that we will restrict liberties. And I note that in New South Wales, they've already started doing this. They're talking about banning protests. And we must always be vigilant to not let the government of the day in any state or jurisdiction overreact to what's happening. And we must be mindful of that and stand in defence of freedom, because this is what those who hate freedom, this is what terrorists hate the most, is people who, regardless of the awful, heinous crimes that they commit, we stand firm in defence of liberal democracy and in defence of freedom in our own country. And on that, I would like to finish.
Being a libertarian is sometimes described as like being the only sober person in the car and no one will let you drive. The government is driving us into the dark.